Hello, guys. Welcome to the fifth episode of the Dragon's Journey podcast, and I'm joined by my guest, the rent-to-rent specialist, Don Jeevy. Would you like to introduce yourself and let everyone know what you do and how
Yeah,
you got
sure.
into property?
Absolutely. Thanks, Buckley. How long should I go on for?
As long as you need to be honest.
All right, sure. Yeah, so I'm Don. I've got a company called Little Piggy Rentals, which I started just over a year ago, and it's a rent-to-rent serviced accommodation business. So what this model entails is renting a property from a landlord and then subletting it night by night to keep the rental arbitrage. And there's a couple of different ways you can do rent to rent. You can do it room by room, such as a HMO, house and multiple occupation, or night by night. So that would be serviced accommodation. You can do a mix of both, but that's a topic for a bit later. I'm not into that.
Yeah.
So my rent to rent journey started in summer last year and set up my company in August. Within 4 months, I'd secured my first deal. It can really vary how long it takes people to find their first deal. Some
Yeah.
get multiple in the first month or two. Some people, it takes them up to a year or even over. It just depends on how much you put into it, how prepared you are, and also what opportunities come up. And so at this point in my journey, I now have three service accommodation deals. One I've been running since March this year. So although we signed the deal at the start of the year, it took a couple months to get the keys because
Okay.
that's when the landlord was moving out. So that has been going very well. The last 3 months, we've been 99% occupied. We only had one empty night back in September, and it's been just back-to-back guests in that
Oh,
time.
that's exactly what you want, though. You don't want to have any time. That's the dream I've heard from a lot of renter essays that you always want it to be as fully booked as possible.
I've heard something different actually, because let's say you are charging £100 a night and you're getting 100% occupancy. Just
Yeah.
for example, that would be £3,000 revenue for the month. Now, what if you were only 66% occupied, but you're charging 160 a night? Uh, I'm not quite sure on the numbers exactly, but that it feels like that would be more revenues and less wear and tear on the property. And that's surely ideal, right? Because then you've also got less cleaning costs. So I
That's true.
suppose if you're charging a lot more and then your prices are higher, so the demand for your property is lower, then you're not selling as much. But what you are selling is for a higher rate. And
Yeah.
so you're getting more money in and less people in the door, less wear and tear. That could be better. But even so, being fully booked, we're making good money from it. It's can't really complain really. So the last 6, 7 months, we've averaged £1,350 profit from a property we don't even own.
Oh,
It's
wow.
a luxury one bed service apartment in the heart of Stevenage, um, and it's going very well, as I say.
Yeah.
So we picked up the keys to property number two just over a month ago, and I say we've got three deals. I'm about to sign on the third deal within like a couple of days. So that's a management deal coming up. It's still a rent to rent, but
Yeah, I was
my
gonna say,
company
could you
isn't a
explain
tenant.
how that's different as well? Like,
Sure. So you can have a serviced accommodation deal that's either a rent to rent or a management deal. So with a management deal, you're either managing a property on behalf of a landlord, so they carry the risk and reward, and you take, say, 15% of the gross revenues as your profit, or you can manage it on behalf of another rent-to-rent company. So let's say you want to start a rent-to-rent service accommodation business, but you don't have time to manage it.
yeah,
You can find the deal or pay someone to find you a deal. You can set it up yourself or pay someone to set it up for you, and then you can run it yourself or pay a management company to run it for you. So you can get started in rent-to-rent service accommodation with very little time. If you have less time, you need to put more money in, I'd say, to
yeah.
get people to do the work for you. But yeah, I started with pretty much no money, no experience in property, but lots of time because I had recently graduated from university and I was just all in on my property journey, which gave me plenty of time to learn the ropes, to learn the systems and automations, to understand the things that I needed to learn to get my first deal and the subsequent deals, and systemize the deals so that it requires very little of my time. And I'm now at a point where I've got a cleaning team working for me that cleans the property when I need to. We just let them know when we need a changeover,
Yeah.
what linen requirements we have, and then they go do it, and we pay them at the end of the month.
Oh, that
So
that's actually
that's
a great
that's
system in place, to be honest. I was gonna also say, like, so let's take it back a little bit. What was life like before you decided to get into property? What were
okay.
your goals
So
and ambitions like? Did you always have a mindset of working for yourself, or did you like first try the employee route and then realize, this isn't quite for me, and then you went straight into property afterwards?
I realized pretty early on that I didn't want to be an employee long term. So I had a few jobs, part-time jobs in during my university years and a little bit after, just to get me by so that I could figure out what I wanted to do because I knew I didn't want to be an employee. I didn't
Yeah,
want to have someone controlling all of my working life, dictating everything I do and limiting my ambition to what they want me to do. And also, I felt like that the earning potential was limited, and I'm always going to be less than what they're earning, uh,
yeah,
pretty much. And I wanted to be in full control of my company, who I work with, when I work. That freedom is what allows me to give back, to focus on my passion projects. That the whole reason I started this business was because I want to build wealth to give back and help animals. Because that's a big passion of mine. It's I've been vegan almost 5 years now, and pretty much straight after I went vegan, I got really involved in public outreach, just putting myself out there so that people could come and talk to me about animal rights issues, because I feel like animals have it pretty rough. There's a lot of killing happening, to put it bluntly,
yeah.
and I feel like there doesn't need to be much at all, if any. So and they can't represent themselves. They don't have a voice. So that really struck my heart, and it's been a passion of mine for almost 5 years. And the whole vision of building wealth was basically instrumental, so that I could then fund activists to do their thing, to fund these campaigns to inspire critical thought and change the world one person at a time.
100%. It makes sense because you can't really change much if you haven't got the money behind you as well, which is a good strategy to get into property
Mm,
to then build that wealth. So then you can essentially have a bucket loads of money that you can utilize to fight the problem, which totally makes sense.
exactly, yeah.
So
Have you heard the saying, you've got to be a bit selfish to be
yeah,
selfless?
you have to
You
be.
can be more selfless later if you fill up your jug first.
And it's weird because growing up, they always say, "Oh, be selfless first," but it's like you can't be that if you're not in a position to be able to like give more. If you're not eating
Mm,
yourself, how can you give? Essentially.
exactly, yeah.
So like,
It's a bit of a moral dilemma at times
yeah,
because you think you're kind of ignoring someone's pain when you could be helping them. So
yeah,
how much do you give now? It's like, do I give £10 now and feed 10 people? Or
yeah,
do I invest that £10, multiply it, and feed so many more people later?
yeah,
I think it's about finding the balance.
yeah.
Because if you're always saying, oh, I'm just going to keep reinvesting and give more later,
That
then
later will never come. There's a chance you will never come.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So like, okay, so with rent to rent, did you get educated before? Because before you got into
yeah,
it, like, and how did you find
I
that?
did. So I was first exposed to property entrepreneurship, property investing almost 3 years ago. In fact, it was just over 3 years ago, early 2019.
Yeah,
And at the time, I was still at university, and I felt that I didn't want to divert my focus from my university studies and go half in on property, half at university, and then they're both mediocre, maybe not do so well in uni, maybe not even pass if I'm just splitting my focus like that.
oh yeah,
So
final year
in
uni,
the
it's
back of my
hard
mind,
to. Yeah,
mm, yeah, in the back of my mind, I knew that I wanted to get into property, but I didn't know what strategy. So
yeah,
I just held off until I graduated and then invested in advanced training, which then showed me more about the strategies. And I decided on the rent to rent surface accommodation model because it's a high cash flowing strategy.
yeah,
It requires very little input. And if you set up and manage it yourself, it does require more time than other strategies.
Yeah.
But I felt that I had that time and I didn't have as much to input. So let's say you want to buy a house and do it up, that could take multiple tens of thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
And sure, you can raise that from an investor. But I felt that that would be very hard with no experience. And at least with the rent to rent model, let's say you invest 5 to 6K of somebody else's money in a deal, get them a good return.
Yeah.
£5 to £6,000 isn't as much as
Yeah.
30K.
Hundreds of
It's a lot
thousands.
easier
Yeah.
to raise that amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it totally makes sense because when I first started, I thought, okay, I'd do deal sourcing first, and then I'd use that cash flow to then get into renter serviced accommodation mainly. But then the more I learned, the more other strategies I learned. I was like, why don't I just fully stick to deal sourcing and then afterwards get actual houses and then do serviced accommodation? Because then if the worst comes to worst, I'll just change it back to buy to let, to be honest.
Yeah, that's about having multiple exit strategies.
Yeah. But like your way definitely works as well because obviously with mine, deal sourcing, it's like you sell a deal, but then you have to find the next one. Whereas with yours, like every month, if you stay on top of it, you've got something coming in. So it's
Yeah.
really a choice of which one works better for you, I'd say.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah, it's if you're doing, say, property development, there's big cash involved in that,
yeah,
especially with the larger development deals. But they can take a long time to get off the ground, so you start getting paid.
yeah,
And so I'd like to get into developments a bit later to really start building that wealth. And for the meantime, to give me the means and the resources to spend more of my time looking for these larger deals and setting them up and getting them done, really, the service accommodation strategy provides me the cash flow so that I can then free up my time and do that kind of thing.
nah, 100%. Like, it makes sense. It genuinely does make sense. So, how much would you say you'd need to build up to before you start investing in buying your own assets? Like, what strategy would you go into first? Would it be a flip, or would it be a BRR, or just buy to let to get your first one? Because I know, like with
Well, you can buy property using other people's money.
oh yeah,
If you use someone else's money as a deposit and to refurbish it, you can structure a deal so that you pull all of the initial investment out,
yeah,
pay your investor back with interest,
yeah,
and then you're left with this property that you didn't buy using your own money. You just did the process. And so I'd say it's not about how much do you need to save up to buy a property, because that's the slow way of doing it. If you're limiting your financial resources to what you have, your growth is going to be linear and a lot slower. Whereas if you tap into OPM,
other
other
people's
people's
money,
money,
yeah,
coined by Robert Kiyosaki, then it well, how many people are there on Earth? 8 billion,
yeah,
right? It multiplies your potential resources by 8 billion. So I'd like to think about how I can tap into other people's money, but for to do that kind of project, all I need is to make sure that my monthly cash flows are there and that I've got all my bills paid with a nice buffer. So let's say, you know, for me, I'm quite frugal. I don't spend a lot of money. 2K would be plenty for me.
yeah,
But just so that I could have a nice buffer and pay for some things for the business if needed.
yeah,
I say 5,000 per month from a Systemise service accommodation business,
yeah.
which then frees up my time. Then I can use other people's money and do these massive projects and make a load of money.
Nah, it makes sense totally because they say, if you go by yourself, it's a lot slower, but if you go, it's faster when you go together. I've completely forgot the saying, but I'll remember it later.
Oh yeah, I think that's an old African proverb. It's like if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go
Further,
together.
go with others. Yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
So raising fine. To be honest, that's what I've been in another group with another mentor of mine. Like we're currently doing a raising finance challenge, and that's my main goal as well to just use the funds on maybe a flip project, and then once this property's sold, give the investor their money with their returns, and any like other extra profit left over, I'll just keep as my own. What would you say was the mindset that you had to get your first rent-to-rent deal?
Persistence, patience, constant improvement of my process and strategy and habits. It's all about being self-critical, self-loving, but critical in that you're always looking for ways of how you can improve your
Yeah,
process and make things more efficient. Because the way I see it, the longer it takes me to build wealth and give back, the the less I'm doing for others. It's my moral duty to get this done as quickly and efficiently as possible.
yeah,
And so if I'm dilly-dallying and not being self-critical and fine-tuning my process consistently,
yeah.
sustainably, I'm doing others a disservice.
Nah, yeah, that makes sense. Especially with your goals to try saving like animals as well. It makes sense that you'd want to get it done a lot sooner then. Would you ever, talking about animal, would you ever like create your own zoo maybe? But like finding animals that might have, I don't know, not been able to survive on their own without being looked after kind of thing? Would you ever create it?
I'd go more along the sanctuary route if I
Yeah,
were to go down that road.
yeah,
So that would be, yeah, a home where it's maybe funded. I think philanthropy is the wrong word. That's like love of humans. Maybe philanomy. I just
yeah,
made that up, but yeah, that kind of thing where it's like it's funded not by itself, like it's not funded by visitors coming to view the animals. It's funded by donations and from an external income.
yeah. And to be honest, there are other ways as well that I think you could fund things. Like, for example, if you made it a show where you're just doing like basically a reality show with the animals there, that's another way that you could easily fund it, I feel. That a lot of people
Yeah, I
aren't
suppose
tapping
that's
into.
kind of media.
Yeah,
It got to be careful not to use the animals like and exploit them for entertainment purposes. But I see what you mean. If you like document the
yeah,
process
yeah. I mean, like,
and
as
just
in the.
show people how,
Oh, sorry, carry on.
I just to show people how you do what we do and the impact it has on these animals' lives. And yeah, that could be a source of income. Say if you started a YouTube channel
Yeah,
about building the sanctuary, that would be
yeah,
cool.
and just like when I said it, I meant as well like the day to day of the actual people in the business as well, like not necessarily the animal,
Mm.
just the crazy stuff that can happen between the people working there. That would be a good show, I feel.
Mm. Oh yeah, for real. Mm.
So, like with the rent business, I know you said you're getting the systems in place to make sure it's as hands off for you as possible. So, what tips would
Yeah.
you have for someone that's getting into rent? What systems would you say they need to prioritize getting in order first?
So first things first, ideally you need to be on Airbnb and Booking.com because they are the main marketing channels and it's completely hands-free, the marketing. You don't need to really spend money on a marketing budget if you're using Booking.com and Airbnb. It makes that side of the business really streamlined. But then if you're on both platforms, you don't want to get double bookings because if somebody books this weekend in one of your apartments,
Yeah,
and then within an hour or two, someone else books that weekend on different platforms, and you haven't had time to see that booking, go on the other platform and take those dates off, then you're going to have a double
yeah,
booking. Someone's going to get disappointed, and maybe you'll get a bad review. And so there's a thing called a channel manager. It's a piece of software. There are many channel managers to choose from, such as Avivo, Uplisting, Smoobu, Hostfully, lots of them. Um, these software plug into Airbnb, Booking.com, and many other online travel agencies, and they synchronize the calendar. They give you ways that you can automate processes like invoicing and guest communications, among other things, and make it so that you have one place for organizing your property listing online.
Yeah, that's a great shout as well. Because I also saw, as well as the channel managers, a good one to have is Nest, I believe. I think it's called Nest, where you can like manage if there's you can. It's got like it's like Ring Doorbell. There's one for that for like the key code entry to the house. So then, if a guest loses the keys, they don't really need it because they just type in the code and they can enter the building. And then there's the other one for the that ties into the central heating of the house. So then if they leave it on full
Mm.
whack, they go out, you can just be like, oh, no one's in the house, let me just turn it down. And then when they come back, you can turn it back up so it warms the house up for them as well. I thought that'd be a good one,
Mm.
especially for
Yeah.
HMOs. I feel that one might be a bit better.
There are pieces of hardware and software that can integrate with certain channel managers to automate this, because of course the channel manager knows when a guest is coming and when they're not supposed to be
Yeah,
there. And so that can talk to the heating system
yeah.
and turn the heating off when they're not there. So a heating system that does that is, I think it's called Inspire Home Automation. I think that's it.
Okay. Oh wow. Because I knew like you could have it on the app on your phone to just like do it manually. I just didn't know the channel manager
Yeah.
would do it as well. That's pretty cool.
Mm. Yeah, there is one that does that. Of course, you can do it manually with a typical home heating system, smart heating, such as Nest, Hive, yeah, something like that. But then that's still manual. But Inspire Home Automation is an example of one that is completely automated.
Okay. So like, when you're doing a serviced accommodation, what do you mainly look for when you like analyzing the deals to make sure it's in a good area that will rent out essentially?
Mm. So it requires a lot of research into various areas local to you, because you don't want to be managing something 4 or 5 hours away. It's not
Yeah.
ideal, in case you need to nip up there and deliver some toilet roll or something. But yeah, I've lost my train of thought there. What was I saying? Oh yeah, what do you look for in a good deal? So I would analyze the rental rates in a given area. So I'd look on Rightmove or Zoopla, and I'd see how much are the properties that I would go for renting at. So you can look at the let agreed filter, and that shows you properties that have already been let. So instead of the asking price, which it might not actually go for, it might be just under or over, let agreed shows you the actual price that it rented out for. And what you can do is then get an average of all the properties that are of the same standard and quantity of bedrooms and location that you would like to go for. Let's say it's £1,000 a month. You know that the average property in that area that is of sufficient standard to run a quality business from would be £1,000. It might be 900 in another area, 1,800 somewhere else, but let's say 1,000 for that area. And then you need to see how much demand is there. So if you look on Booking.com or Airbnb and open up all your competitors and just see how booked out they are, what percentage of the next 4 weeks are booked out, and that will give you your average occupancy for the
Yeah.
area. And the last piece of the puzzle, so you've got rental rates, occupancy rates, and then nightly rates. So you need to see how much are these places selling for night by
Yeah.
night. And there are other costs involved, like the deposit, the furnishing costs, the monthly bills, but those generally won't vary much area by
Yeah.
area. So the main three that vary area by area are the rental, nightly rates, and occupancy rates. So it depends on how these three stack and how they affect each other that will give you your average expected net profit for a given area. Do that calculation enough for, say, 30 or 40 areas local to you and sort them by expected net profit, and then you found your top goldmine areas that you want to focus on.
Honestly, guys, I hope you guys were listening to that because that is genuinely like so important. Because I remember because what you guys might not realize, I'm in Don's renter essay group, and we have like,
Yeah.
well, bi-weekly calls now. And genuinely, when he's walking us through this, like, you can see it for yourself, like how much detail like Don goes into the research before he takes one, and that's why he's so good at it. um, so okay, so what would you say? Yeah, through this entire time of having this essay, what's been the most shocking things you've come across?
Some guests have been challenging and disrespectful. Right? They take certain liberties without permission, and you've got to be adaptive and know how to deal with that and be prepared for a situation like that. So, for example, we use these padlock key safes outside the property. So we started with one. So it's a
Yeah,
key safe, like you might see outside an elderly person's home for a carer. But then it's outside your property so that you can give them the code, they can access the keys and access the property. And if you can't drill into the wall, then you can get a padlock one that can go on a railing outside. So we use that. And one of the guests, I don't know if it was intentional or it was an accident, but the next guest came after them and they couldn't access the key safe. So I thought, right, I need a backup key
yeah,
safe to make sure that if that happens, then I can tell the next guest to use the other key safe. And another one was we've had a couple of people attempt to run their business from our property with visiting clients.
oh damn.
Now, I don't know what they're trying to do in these properties. Allegedly, they are massage therapists, or they're selling tattoo cream from their property, and they didn't tell me in advance that they'd intended to invite people up for 15 minutes at a time throughout the day. But I can see everything on the doorbell camera. I know exactly who's coming and
I
then when.
never.
So after a few people, I message them and say, "Oh, hey, by the way, we've noticed various people come for these short stints of time. Not sure if you're aware, but we don't allow people to run their business. These are in the terms and conditions that you've
Yeah,
signed. And be aware that there is a fee for breaking our rules, which we can just keep your damage deposit if you
yeah,
break them." And these people trying to run their business, financially motivated, that's usually enough to have them
yeah.
leave.
I was gonna say I don't know how I'd respond to that because that's a weird thing to like experience. But it comes in. It's what comes with the business, I guess.
Yeah, it's people just trying to make money in their own way. Um, Not saying it's ethical or not, but it's the way they're trying to do it, being
Yeah,
sly, not being upfront, doesn't sit well with us. And they might invite some very unsavory characters into the
yeah,
building. So we can't have that. We operate in residential buildings, and that behavior isn't
yeah.
welcome.
And no, 100%. Another question as well. Like, what do you feels better, apartments or houses?
Well, I'm only operating from
Yeah,
apartments so far. It depends on the market in the area. So if there's a lot of development work going on in an area, and you know that there are going to be contractor
yeah,
teams coming from all over the country throughout the next 3 to 5 years because of the local council's development plans, then safe to say there's going to be strong demand for houses because these are ways that companies can accommodate large groups of staff, say between 4 and 10 people, for long amounts of time. And it's a lot cheaper than paying for individual hotel rooms for the whole time. And not only is it a lot cheaper for larger groups, for say 8 people to rent a house with multiple bedrooms, couple beds in each room, it's also more space for them, more privacy. They have a lounge they can share together. They can cook their own food and save money on hotel restaurant fees. So if there's demand for contractors in the area, or maybe even uh, like a leisure attraction near the beach where people are going to want to stay with their family, then that should be a good location for houses. But then if you're heading into central London where you've got a lot of people traveling in smaller groups, either alone with a friend or a couple, then smaller properties between 1 and 2 bedrooms should be
Okay.
good for
So
that
it's
kind of
all about
market.
your end user and who you plan on having stay in that property, I'm guessing, which makes total sense.
Yeah, that's right. It's ideal to know your customer avatar. What age are they? What do they do? Why are they coming to your property? If you can pinpoint the exact type of person you're targeting, then you can tailor the property around them, and you're a lot more likely to get those
Yeah,
bookings.
makes total sense. But essay and rent aside, what do you do like just to relax or just get out that's outside of the business or just have fun? Do you play any specific sports or
I've I've been into gym fitness, not so much the last month. I've been prioritizing other things with these 2 new property deals, some more advanced training. But I feel like I don't really have time out enough. I'm just so mission driven. I It doesn't feel right taking time out for me. Like I don't have much
yeah?
playtime, I
Oh no,
suppose.
I 100% agree with you. Like ever since I've started this, I haven't been going out as much, if that makes sense, because I'm just like, nah, I need to get
Hmm.
money first. And then once I've secured
Yeah.
all of that, then I'll think about fitness. Even today, like I've started making sure I go to the gym before anything. So then it's like, okay, it's already out the way.
Hmm.
Now I don't have to think about, oh my God, I haven't got to gym today. It's like, no, I've already done it kind of thing.
Yes, it's something I've been considering the past few days actually. How am I going to ramp up my progress towards my fitness and health goals? And I'm implementing a new morning routine. So getting to bed earlier, waking up earlier, and getting these good habits in the morning before the day kicks off so that I feel more accomplished and energized and just looking after myself more before it's all business mode. So that entails a bit of morning meditation, some journaling, morning walk, some push-ups and pull-ups, and yeah, just getting ready, showering, having breakfast.
That makes sense. That's actually really good. That's a lot better than mine. Uh, yeah, I think, man, you've literally gone through. Oh, yeah. Okay, so if you were to start again, completely new environment, away from Stevenage, let's just some random other city, you had about 6 months of rent paid for, you had a phone, food paid for as well, but you had to start from scratch again. What would be the first few things you'd get done?
Do I have
Oh
my
yeah, yeah, you
memories and
still
my
have your
knowledge
knowledge.
in this
You still have all
hypothetical
of that. You just start
and my
no
contacts?
contacts now.
Okay. All right. First thing is I would get networking. I'd start hosting a weekly support group and I would head out to as many local networking events as I could, and I'd get my property set up, and I'd stick with service accommodation because I know the business and I'm confident that I could get it off to a good start. I'd then start looking for great deals in the area, and wherever I am, I'm sure there's bound to be plenty of great opportunity within a half an hour's drive. So I'd start building a spreadsheet that analyzes all of the local areas based on the rental rates, nightly rates, and occupancy, and pinpoint where I'm going to start and start making calls. So I'd message agents on message landlords on Open Rent and Facebook Marketplace who are advertising their properties. I would call agents and book in some viewings. And I feel that as soon as I have a great deal, I could put together a deal proposal, head out to one of these networking events, and raise the finances for it. Because yeah, there's so much amazing opportunity out there. And even if I don't raise the money in time for that property, I've then got an investor on board for the
Yeah,
next property. So I would find the deal, use the deal proposal to find the investor, and then hopefully I get the investor in time to fund the deal. If not, I'll just keep the investor informed, then they'll fund the next deal. And yeah, I think having a great networking, tapping into other people's resources is essential for building this kind of
Yeah.
business. And it might be that the fastest way to build it is to leverage deal sources, because these are people with vast amounts of leads coming to them. So potential deals, they find deals, they
Yeah.
negotiate them, they seal the deal, and then they sell the deal to someone else for like 2.5 grand. And deals can still stack for
Yeah.
that amount of money. You can still get a great return even if you're paying 2.5 grand. Because if you think about it, let's say it takes you 3 months on your own to find a deal, calling agents, talking to landlords directly. Well, that 2.5 grand could be almost 3 months profits.
Yeah. And they've done all the hard work for you,
So if
like
you
you
just,
said. Like they're just saying, hey, you just take the
mm,
contract on and you've got your own unit already.
yeah, it might be well worth it to invest in a deal sourcer to get the deal over the line faster. And then you can use that first deal as a springboard to show people what you're doing, bring more people on board, demonstrate your experience to agents and landlords, and get the subsequent deals faster. So that's something I would consider if I was starting from afresh.
And there you go, guys. We've got our first rent-to-rent specialist on the podcast. Hopefully, you've taken notes because genuinely, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. Like, I don't like bringing people on the show that haven't done it, and I know for a fact he's doing it, and he's active, and he's really good at what he does. So, if have you got any socials that you'd like to plug in, or website that you'd like to plug into the podcast before?
Yeah, so people can find me at thepropertydon.co.uk. And if you just Google Don Jeevy, that's DonJeevy, you'll find on my
There you
website.
go, guys, and hope you enjoy the episode. And I promise next episode it'll be a lot better quality on my side. But yeah, take care, guys.
Thanks for having me
Bye
back.